Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into Jodi Picoult's Picture Perfect.
Ooh, exciting.
I know, right? So, you guys have given us some excerpts from the novel itself, along with a study guide. And we're going to be kind of dissecting this tale of Cassie Barrett.
Okay.
She's an anthropologist who wakes up with amnesia.
Oh, wow.
And the story is about her seemingly perfect marriage to Hollywood heartthrob Alex Rivers.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And I'm so interested to explore how Picoult portrays domestic abuse in this book. And you know how Cassie's past relationships might be influencing her present choices. And of course, we have to delve into those two very different but very complex men in her life, Alex and Will.
I'm excited.
Me too.
So where should we start?
Well, I was really struck by how Picoult uses Cassie's amnesia. It's not just a plot device, you know? It really becomes like a tool for the reader, you know? Like as her memories start to resurface, we start to question everything along with her.
Right.
We're kind of piecing together a puzzle with her. And with each piece, that picture-perfect facade starts to crumble.
Right. It's like you think everything's perfect, and then all of a sudden, it's not.
Right. And at first glance, Alex is like everything you'd expect from this charming movie star. You know, successful, attentive,
Right.
almost too good to be true, which is kind of a red flag right there.
Yes, definitely.
But as the layers peel back, you start to see this really calculated manipulation, almost like he's following a playbook. Have you ever heard of this thing called love bombing?
I have. I think I have. What is it?
Well, it's this tactic that abusers will often use to establish control early in a relationship. So think grand gestures, constant attention, showering their partner with affection and gifts, like creating this whirlwind romance that's hard to resist.
Yeah, but it's all like fake, right?
That'd
To
be-
kind of get control.
Right. It's all about like creating a dependency, making the victim crave that intense validation. Yeah, so you kind of set someone up for a fall, right? You build them up so high only to knock them down later. And then, you know, that fall is all the more devastating.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's so sad. So that's where this cycle of abuse comes in. And that's the violent outbursts followed by the remorse, apologies, promises to change. And then you get this brief return to the honeymoon phase, and it kind of like, you know, it pulls the victim back into this false sense of security.
Right, yeah.
It's this push and pull that makes it so difficult for someone to break free. They're constantly hoping for that loving partner to reappear,
Makes sense.
blaming themselves for the abuse, holding on to this belief that things will get better.
Right, yeah.
And it's heartbreaking because you see how Cassie's desperately trying to make sense of this whole chaos. But the book doesn't just focus on her experience, you know, like it delves into Alex's past as well, revealing a childhood that was deeply affected by domestic violence. We see him as a child, witnessing his father's abuse, you know, his mother's emotional distance. So I'm so curious, how does that shape someone? Can you talk a little bit about how witnessing such violence at a young age might shape someone like Alex?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, it's important to remember that children are incredibly perceptive.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they absorb the dynamics that they see around them.
Yeah.
And often they internalize them as like normal, even when those dynamics are harmful.
Right. Wow.
So in Alex's case, you know, violence became so intertwined with love. He never learned healthy ways to express emotions, you know, especially anger or even to resolve conflict constructively.
Makes sense.
So he craves control because that was the one thing he never had as a child. And that, you know, then kind of plays out in his relationship with Cassie, the isolation, the manipulation, you know, using his fame and influence to just intimidate her.
So that's where the gaslighting comes in. This tactic of making someone doubt their own memories and perceptions.
Precisely, yeah. Gaslighting is all about just eroding someone's sense of reality, making them question their sanity, their judgment, their worth. And that constant undermining leaves them feeling so vulnerable, dependent, and ultimately unable to trust themselves.
Wow. And then on top of all that, you have Will Flying Horse, who enters the story. He's a Native American LAPD officer who rescues Cassie.
Oh.
And he seems to represent this safe haven, this stark contrast to all the chaos that Alex brings.
I see, yeah.
But as we get to know Will, we start to realize he's carrying his own burdens.
Interesting.
Will's story is so compelling because it highlights those often invisible scars of emotional neglect and cultural displacement. You know, he was removed from his Native American roots and raised in a white foster system.
Right.
I mean, just imagine that. Imagine like the feeling of not belonging anywhere, constantly navigating two worlds, never fully accepted in either. It's no surprise that he struggles with things like trust and intimacy.
Yeah.
You can almost feel this wall that he's built around himself, this fear of vulnerability, and yet there's this urge to protect Cassie.
Interesting.
Almost like he's trying to right the wrongs of his own past by saving her.
I see.
And that's where his savior complex comes into play. He equates love with protection.
Oh, okay.
But this often, manifests as a subtle form of control. He wants to shield her from harm, but in doing so, he inadvertently stifles her independence.
Right.
It seems like both Alex and Will, despite their drastically different approaches, they both end up creating this imbalance in their relationships with Cassie.
Right, which is interesting.
It really is. It's a fascinating paradox.
Yeah.
Two seemingly different men, but they both struggle with control in their own ways, and both leave Cassie feeling emotionally insecure.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if she's somehow drawn to these types of men, like almost like there's this pattern at play. And I think that's where the introduction of Connor, Cassie's childhood friend, becomes really intriguing. Like, I was struck by how his presence might shed light on Cassie's choices. Like, he might hold the key to understanding these recurring patterns in her relationships.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. I'm curious to learn more about Connor.
Yeah, me too. So Connor, he wasn't abusive like Alex, but there's this sense that he represents this early template for the kind of emotional dynamic Cassie finds herself drawn to. You know what I mean?
Let's see, yeah.
Like, he wasn't this bad guy, but...
It makes you think, could it be that Connor, even though it was just a childhood friendship, like, laid the groundwork for what Cassie now, like, subconsciously expects from a relationship?
Yeah.
Like, maybe she just learned to accept those crumbs of affection, those moments of connection interspersed with a lot of distance.
Right. Like, maybe she's just used to that, sadly. And so we're seeing this potential link between Connor, Alex, and even Will. They all share this tendency towards emotional unavailability, I guess you could say, this blend of care and withdrawal that just keeps Cassie constantly guessing.
Right. And it raises a question for you, the listener. Think about the people you've been drawn to in your own life. Are there any recurring patterns? Do you find yourself attracted to similar personality types, even if those relationships haven't always been the healthiest?
It's a good question, and it's definitely something to think about. But stepping back from the individual characters for a second, Picture Perfect also tackles some broader societal issues, right? The fact that Alex is this huge celebrity kind of adds another layer to the story. Like, it's not just a personal relationship, it's out there for the world to see.
Right. Picoult uses Alex's fame to expose those dangers of believing in that picture-perfect image. Fame acts as a shield, making it harder for Cassie to speak out or to even be believed if she did. It's a commentary on how societal pressures, especially in the age of social media, can silence victims and even perpetuate abuse.
That's so true. It's like we're all complicit in a way, right? We buy into the celebrity persona, the carefully crafted public image. We don't often think to question what might be lurking beneath the surface.
Right, and that raises an unsettling question. How many people are actually trapped in similar situations, enduring abuse because they feel pressured to uphold a certain image? It makes you think about the power dynamics at play. How someone's fame and influence can be used to manipulate and control.
Yeah, it's a chilling thought. It definitely makes Picture Perfect more than just a personal story, that's for sure. It becomes a reflection of these larger societal issues, these systems that can enable abuse. But, shifting gears a bit, Cassie's journey, despite all the trauma, isn't just about being a victim, right?
Right, definitely not.
There are these glimmers of hope, moments where she reclaims her agency.
Her amnesia, while terrifying, becomes a catalyst for self-discovery. It's almost like she's been given this blank slate, Stripped of her memories, she's forced to confront who she is at her core, independent of the roles she's been playing. Wife, anthropologist, victim.
Totally. Like, she's been given a second chance to define herself, right? To make choices based on what she truly wants, not what's expected of her.
And that's a powerful message, isn't it? No matter what you've been through, no matter how lost you feel, it's never too late to reclaim yourself. It's about recognizing those patterns that no longer serve you, those relationships that diminish you, and just choosing something different.
Choosing something different, that's a great way to put it. Speaking of choosing differently, I want to go back to Alex for a moment. The book delves into his childhood, and it paints a pretty bleak picture. It's heartbreaking to see what he endured, the constant fear, the unpredictability of his father's violence, the emotional void left by his mother. Like, it's no wonder he struggles to form healthy attachments as an adult.
Yeah, it's understandable.
It's almost like he learned to equate love with pain, with control. And sadly, That cycle just repeats itself in his relationship with Cassie.
Right. But what's fascinating is that Picoult doesn't just present him as a monster.
Yeah.
You know, like we see glimpses of vulnerability,
Yeah.
moments of what seem to be genuine remorse. It's this complexity that makes him such a compelling character. And, it speaks to the fact that abusers aren't always easy to identify.
It's true. It's true. And that duality is so unsettling because it keeps Cassie and us as readers constantly guessing. Like, is this the real Alex?
Yeah.
The one who expresses love through these grand gestures and apologies? Or is it all a facade, just a way to maintain control?
Right. Yeah. And let's not forget the role his fame plays in all of this.
Yeah.
It allows him to hide his true self, to maintain this public persona of a charming, successful star. It's almost like his fame becomes a weapon, protecting him from accountability.
Exactly. It really does. And it just reinforces the idea that what we see on the surface is rarely the whole story. There's so much happening beneath the surface, both in Alex's life and in the lives of so many others who are struggling silently.
Right. Exactly.
And that brings us to Will, right? His childhood, while different from Alex's, is equally crucial in understanding his approach to relationships. Being removed from his Native American roots, being raised in a system that didn't fully embrace his culture, that leaves a mark, right?
Absolutely. A profound mark.
It creates this sense of rootlessness, this feeling of never truly belonging. And I can see how that would lead to difficulty with trust, with intimacy. It's like he's always holding back, protecting himself from further hurt.
Yeah. And that's where savior complex comes in, right? It's his way of dealing with that deep-seated pain, that fear of vulnerability. By protecting Cassie, by almost trying to fix her, he's trying to heal himself in a way.
I see.
But it's a misguided approach, and it ultimately leads to a different kind of imbalance in their relationship.
Right. He's so focused on being her protector that he forgets to simply be her partner. There's this lack of genuine connection, that open, vulnerable communication that it seems like Cassie really craves.
It makes you wonder, can we truly love someone else if we haven't learned to love and accept ourselves, flaws and all?
Yeah.
Can we really create healthy relationships if we're constantly trying to fix or save the other person?
Those are big questions, and I think they're at the heart of Picture Perfect, honestly. It's not just a story about romantic love. It's about self-love, It's about recognizing our own worth and breaking free from those patterns that keep us from experiencing that authentic connection.
Yeah, it feels like Cassie's journey is less about finding the one and more about understanding herself and the patterns she's drawn to.
I agree with that. It's about recognizing those ingrained patterns and, having the strength to break free from them.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the title Picture Perfect. It's not about achieving some idealized version of love, but about seeing relationships and ourselves with clear eyes.
Right. And that connects to, the broader theme of domestic abuse. I think Picoult goes beyond that stereotypical portrayal of physical violence.
Yeah.
She really delves into those subtle ways abusers manipulate and control their victims.
The gaslighting, the isolation, that constant erosion of self-esteem, these are all forms of abuse that can be just as damaging, if not more so than physical violence. Exactly, because they attack the victim's very sense of self, their ability to trust their own judgment. It's insidious, and that often leaves lasting scars.
It really does. And we can't forget that added pressure of Alex's fame. Cassie's trapped in this golden cage. She's afraid to speak out for fear of ruining his career or facing, public scrutiny.
It's a powerful commentary on how societal pressures, particularly in the age of social media, can silence victims and perpetuate abuse. The need to maintain a perfect image can be a powerful weapon for an abuser.
For sure. And so while Picture Perfect delves into some really dark places, it also offers this glimmer of hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Cassie doesn't remain this passive victim.
Right. She uses that amnesia, that terrifying loss of self as a chance to rebuild. It forces her to confront her own truth.
Yeah, she really does. And ultimately, she does break free, reclaiming her identity and creating a life on her own terms.
That's powerful. It's a reminder that healing is possible. We have the power to write our own stories, even after experiencing immense pain.
We've covered so much in this step dive, and I'm curious, what stands out to you as like the most powerful takeaway from this novel?
I think for me, it's the reminder that we all have the power to change. By becoming aware of our own tendencies and understanding the roots of our attraction, we can make conscious choices that align with our values and desires.
I like that. It all comes down to self-awareness, I guess. Paying attention to those red flags, trusting our instincts, and just having the courage to walk away from anything that diminishes our worth.
Exactly. And also remembering that seeking support is not a weakness.
Yeah.
Therapy support groups, trusted friends and family. These are all valuable resources that can guide us towards healthier relationships.
It's true. Picture Perfect is a powerful reminder that we're not alone in these struggles.
Yeah.
Domestic abuse is a pervasive issue. And I think this novel does a really great job of shedding light on the complexities and often invisible scars it leaves behind.
It encourages empathy and understanding and a willingness to challenge the societal norms that perpetuate silence around abuse.
And ultimately, it's a story that offers hope. Cassie's journey, while full of pain and betrayal, shows that resilience is possible. She finds the strength to break free, reclaim her identity, and create a life on her own terms.
So inspiring.
It really is. So to our listener, if there's one thing you take away from this deep dive into Picture Perfect, let it be this. You are worthy of love, respect, and healthy relationships. Never settle for anything less.
And remember, there's always help available. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out. There are resources, support systems, and people who care. You don't have to go through this alone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Great.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Picture Perfect. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.